Okay, welcome everybody. One more. How to do that. Hello, and on behalf of myself and the board of Bonnet Shalom, welcome to everyone to our first community live meeting. It's truly wonderful that so many people are here today and online. The Hebrew word Bonnet is all about building structures, building community, and building peace. Bonnet Shalom. I probably have somewhat of a unique perspective on this building process. As many of you know, my father was a high holiday cantor for the first decade or so of the synagogue. I came with him for the first time when he was invited to the newly forming congregation at the Gritz's house. I think it was for Shavuot, and we celebrated in their backyard, no building. For the first few years, Bonnet Shalom rented space from a church on the hill. My family stayed in a motel during the holidays. After the congregation bought a house in Cherryvale, the street, in the mid-'80s, the former living room became the sanctuary on Shabbatot, until the expansion a few years later with the sanctuary. During those early years, my family stayed in the house during the holidays. Then the congregation was on the move again for the holidays, because for a while the congregation was growing with Boulder's general population. We couldn't accommodate our school and occasionally B'nai Mitzvahs. While many of you think this new project has been sudden, it actually has been a long time coming. We're hoping to be at this stage when the pandemic shut down the process over a year and a half ago. In the 13 months since I became president, the structure and surrounding land has been one of the things I've seen firsthand as problematic. Looking at who we are and what our potential is, we are having a difficult time keeping up with our spiritual needs, partly because we are so weighed down with these problems. But tonight, you'll hear a fantastic process that is meant to take us forward. It's actually an opportunity to dream and bring a new vision of what can be for each of and every one of us. For me, for instance, I really hope the sanctuary can keep some of the Hamish welcoming feeling. This is your chance. Each and every person can make their opinions and hopes known, and you will be heard. I know this first meeting was scheduled quickly, and the scheduling was based on finding the first available time post-COVID when we could safely get together. A delay would have moved us again, way past the high holidays. A week from now, there will be another community meeting at 7, this time in person with the architects here in person. We hope that you will be able to join then. We are listening and your engagement is important to us. And now Rabbi Mark will come up and give a few words. Oh.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. And it's good to see some faces and see you who are joining us via Zoom. This hybrid world that we're living in, where we're sort of live stream and Zoom and sanctuary. Like so many of you, I love this space. I love this sanctuary. I've been rabbi here for almost 18 years, and I love it. I love this place. Like many of you, I love the creek. I love hanging out with families on Shabbat. And it's been a catastrophic year in so many ways. We've had 3 floods in this building in the last 6 months. Last Wednesday night, myself and Stacy and Michelle were literally up to our waists in water from this flash flood that happened just outside here. This building has just been through more than it can take right now. And we made the agonizing decision, which I know has been very hard for so many of us, to move our Hebrew school from Shabbat to Sunday. We have no kitchen to serve food. And of course, we're all still traumatized from the effects of COVID and so many other things that happened during this year. This year is our 40th anniversary. And our 40th anniversary, we really honor our founding members. And it's incredible to me that there are so many of our founding members are still actively engaged in so many ways in this community. Marilyn and Jerry right here in the sanctuary. And literally, some of the people who are our founding members built this sanctuary with their own hands. I was speaking to Jim Bear the other day, who remembers every single day after work, him and Bill Schreibitz will come in here and build this structure. And it's so inspiring, the shoulders, the giants that we come after. And this building has served us, but right now it's not serving us. And it's painful for many of us to even think about that, but there are so many opportunities. We're in this sanctuary. This is a space that has been very sacred and very important, very special for so many of us. We've had baby namings, we've had brisses, we've had bar and bat mitzvahs, we've had weddings in here. I've officiated every single kind of life cycle event possible in this space. And I feel the energy and the narratives and the stories of all of those people. Sanctuary in Hebrew is a mishkan. A mishkan is the construction that was built by the Israelites in the desert. And it was a sacred project, and every single member of the community got engaged in that. Everyone showed up, everyone participated, everyone brought something. And that's really our vision. And that's what we're launching tonight. That's the vision, that the whole community becomes engaged and excited by this project. Each of us bringing truma, each of us bringing an offering of some kind, gifts of time, gifts of imagination, gifts of love, and of course, gifts of money. We know, as Michelle alluded to, that some of you are questioning the process, the timing, the concept. We hear you, we really hear you, but we're here now. Some of us are here physically present now, some of you are here on Zoom now, and we're beginning right now. We're beginning with the opportunity to dream of who we are going to become as a community. To dream who we are going to become as a community and what kind of building is going to allow us to dream that dream. I have, and we should all have, incredible gratitude to the people who've been working so far to get us to the point that we're at today. Bruce Wildman and Ron Square and Liz and John Hanson and Jeff Gunn-Levy, and of course the generous funders who've allowed us to reach this phase. And I feel incredibly privileged that I was a part of this process to engage in conversations with architects. I found it so inspiring. The architects who help us get to this concept phase. We had such rich and special conversations. We were asking and pondering questions like, what does it even mean to gather as a community in a post-COVID world? What does that look like? How do we gather safely and responsibly, but also with a new sense of what it means to be together? How do we admit people into Zoom? Oh, someone else is. Okay. How do we consider the relationship between outside space and inside space when we have a space where we so value the outside and we value the inside? How do we bring that liminal space of, am I outside, am I inside? These are the kinds of questions we asked. And of course, other questions like, how can we be the greenest shul in the whole world, which is part of our goal. So our collective imagination and our community's dreams are what is going to actually build this building. Our collective imagination and the dreams that we have of a community. And as my dear, dear, beloved teacher, Reb Zalman, always used to say, the only way to get it together is together. The level of inspiration and excitement and creativity that I felt when we spoke to the architects that we're about to meet now was incredibly high. I felt literally my mind was expanded by those conversations. And I just invite all of you to see each other and to see these three people that you've not yet met with open and generous eyes and hearts, and just to welcome them as we welcome them into our community virtually tonight, and next week we will be welcoming them physically here to our building. So it's my real honor now to introduce and welcome and introduce to all of you, whether you're on Zoom or here in person, Rebecca and Tony and Lara from Feingold Alexander Architects. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you everyone for getting us to this point.
Good. So we're letting them go on.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yeah, just one thing about questions. Go ahead if you're on Zoom. send your questions via the chat to let the speakers answer in the middle.
To Rebecca. Only to Rebecca.
Only to Rebecca. Everybody they'll see it when Rebecca's speaking. And then for people here in the community, since Rebecca can't see you raising your hand, I'll just echo your questions or speak up a little louder, okay? So we'll just try to interrupt. It's a little tricky in this situation, but we'll try our best. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead and take speaker on. There you go.
Great. Fantastic. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I want to really thank Rabbi Mark for such a wonderful introduction, and just say briefly how very excited we are to be with all of you tonight, to be talking about a project type that is really very special and near and dear to the people who are here tonight to present to you, and one with which our firm has been involved for a very long time. This opening slide really speaks to our approach to our work with the Jewish community, and in particular with synagogue design, which has to do with many of the things that Rabbi alluded to in terms of the notion of from generation to generation, the passing down of ritual, of knowledge, and of respecting the past, but designing for the future. And we'll talk about these principles. Next, Laura, please. So very briefly, we'll introduce ourselves. So I am Rebecca Berry. I am the principal and president of Feingold Alexander Architects. I have been involved with a number of synagogues and Jewish community center projects. In fact, the first project that I worked on when I walked through the doors of Feingold Alexander 15 years ago was on a synagogue that we were working on in Dallas. And I still remember saying, "You want me to do what?" And I designed an ark. And it was an incredibly meaningful experience. And I have carried those thoughts and approaches forward with me through my work in other synagogues. I'm going to let my other colleagues introduce themselves briefly, maybe next to Tony.
And I echo Rebecca's sentiments. And again, thank you very much for having us this evening. We're delighted to be here. If not in person, we soon will be. I have been with the firm for 36 years. I'm a principal and director of design. And like Rebecca, I actually began my exposure and journey in designing temples and places of worship, going back to one of the first synagogues our firm did, which shortly came after the development of the Holocaust Memorial Museum, which I also had the honor to be a part of. And I'm delighted to be here tonight, and for us, and for me in particular, to really listen and to learn more about you.
And I am Laura Fott, and I echo the sentiments of all. This is a great opportunity for us, and I'm so happy to have been able to meet a few of you already, and excited to meet the rest of you in the next week. My role in the firm is as a project manager and associate with, I've been working with the firm for 6 years, and I also am our sustainability strategist, which means I lead our group of sustainability folks within the office, making sure that we are meeting our goals as an office, our high standard of sustainability goals in all of our projects, no matter the project type or size as we move forward.
Thank you both. So just to talk a little bit briefly about who we are as a firm coming to meet with all of you. We are a woman-owned business. 4 years ago, a new group of principals took over the leadership of the firm, and 3 of us are women. Our staff is a very diverse set of folks, and we always say that for us, diversity is not just about the numbers that you see on the slide, but it's really about diversity of thought and diversity of background. We are about 35 people and growing. And we come from different schools, different parts of the country, different countries, and different ethnic and racial backgrounds. And we truly believe that this diversity creates the best form of design, that this is one of the ways that we achieve excellence. And also, we work very hard to support this diversity. We are very proud of our in-house policies that really work to help develop people as whole humans. We had flexibility before the pandemic. Now we have it in spades. We support our staff through learning throughout their entire careers and also at different points in their careers through things like paid family leave. So this is just to give you a little bit of a picture of who we are and kind of what we believe in terms of our own internal practice. And we also believe that reflects how we work and face outward to others. We are exceedingly collaborative, and we work extremely hard, not just to listen, but to listen, to report back, and to confirm that we have heard what we think we have heard from our clients and the groups with which we engage. We want to make sure that we get things right throughout the entire design process that we'll talk about a little bit later. So Lara's going to just briefly mention sustainability and our approach to that.
So as I mentioned, sustainability is key to any of our work, and one of the reasons why I am so excited about your project as a whole, because you share so many of our goals. And we, as I said, we have this in-house sustainability group that works through from the beginning stages of any project through to the end. And it works through the design aspects, through the technical aspects, through the detailing that is so crucial in any part. And also working with our staff, as Rebecca said, for extra training and further certifications that just help us keep on the forefront of all of these technical parts of sustainability.
So Tony, do you want to pick up? Yep.
Absolutely. Without getting too much into the details, but we have been designing places of worship, and particularly synagogues and temples, and probably going back now almost 25 years. And it's run the gamut, and it's spread across the country. And these images here are just a few representative snapshots. But one of the things I just want to point out when one views this is that every single synagogue and every single congregation that we've designed for has been uniquely designed for. There is no sort of repeat in terms of how we design or how we think about the way that the project's shape, because it only comes from the conversation with you. So each one of these temples reflects the aspirations and visions of that particular congregation and community, which is why what you see here in front of you is a very diverse body of work. As I said, and we have done projects across the country, and to this day, we feel this is one of the most special projects that we as architects and our firm have had the privilege to be able to design. Next.
Oh. That's less than optimal. Sorry. Rebecca, are you able to pull it up? I'm sorry, my screen has frozen.
Let me see if I can try to do that. Hold on one moment. Sorry, everyone. I feel like we've all gotten used to the technical joy of this year, right?
Apologies, I'm not sure what's happening.
All right, can everyone see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Tony, back to you.
No worries. And one of the things that we often also look to, however, and going to Rebecca, what Rebecca said at the outset, is that we also try to really understand the history and the past, and in some ways how memory informs the future. And when one thinks about the connection, particularly to Jerusalem and to some of the really powerful symbols that occur, these are kind of things that we really want to understand in the body of work that we do, and the importance also of words as it relates to congregation and spirituality, which I think the rabbi particularly spoke so eloquently to I think that these are things that really resonate with us. And, for example, the expression that let them make them a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. These are kind of inspirations and ideas that spark the way that we like to think. And it really derives from words, which in turn derive from really thoughts, which in turn derive from your own aspirations and visions. So these are things that we look to try to understand the historical roots that often ground these projects. And other examples, such as the Wooden Polish synagogues, for example, on the left, many of these, most of these, which actually do not exist anymore, but the historical antecedent in terms of what they represented in the particular history and time, I think were very powerful. Particularly, they were local and vernacular in terms of what they did in describing temples and places of gathering, and also symbolic elements such as the menorah one finds here, the Knesset on the right. But again, the symbolic images and the iconic elements, I think these are things that also come into play. And also in our work, as I mentioned, I did have the privilege of being involved with the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that I really remember in the early phases when Elie Wiesel was particularly sort of very eloquent as he was in speaking about it. And his statement is that he wanted people to come out of this museum with more questions than they went in. And I think that, again, the power of, in terms of thinking about how making spaces and shaping intent, I think is all at the core of what we do as architects. So again, this was something that was very, very special in my opportunity to work on a project such as this. We are going to go through some very simple ideas that we've had sort of extracted from the work we've done, and we'll share a little bit about that. But among the things that we look for is sort of developing, guiding principles in terms of the work and what we've seen. And there are many things that one brings out of these projects, but we'll just literally go through some things that we've experienced, some of which you might find that resonate with you, but we just thought we'd share a few of these. So an entry sequence that leads from the secular to the sacred. I think this is one of the more important things that we felt, that when one enters into a temple and a sanctuary, that you really are moving from the secular outside world into the more spiritual and sacred world. I think that ability to create and shape that movement, I think, is one of the significant aspects of what we believe has been an important part of designing temples and places of worship.
So that thresholding that Tony was talking about, right, that moves through a series of courts. It's very interesting that the rabbi talked about Mishkan. So we have taken an approach to synagogue design that is somewhat inspired by sort of the descriptions of the temple and the notion of the sequence of the courts. So we have this exterior court, if you will, where you begin to prepare yourself. And then there's the question of the gathering, as we say, the gathering of the community in an interior court. So that sort of next threshold, which also serves as a space and a place for so many different activities, right? So this is a synagogue that we designed. This is a space that functions for social functions, for Kiddush, for Hebrew lessons, for pretty much everything you can imagine. It's essentially the village square. And so that carries through our work. Then there's this question of the integration of text, which you saw the sort of inspirations for earlier, and of liturgical art. Items such as Ner Tamid. We have worked with people directly to design these. The opening slide that you saw where it said Lador Vador, the rabbi talked about people bringing gifts. That was a eternal light that I designed together with the donor at BJBE. Roy brought his gift of money, his gift of time, and his gift of dedication and interest. And we worked directly together to design that Ner Tamid. And it has a very special place in this synagogue here at BJBE. Then, of course, we have always had to deal with this question of high holidays, ordinary Shabbat, minyan, chapel, this sort of shrinking or expanding scale of gathering of people for worship. And we've addressed this in many different ways through our synagogues. But the biggest thing that we have always tried to do is to avoid what, of course, many of you have probably seen in sort of many of the mid-century buildings, where the sanctuary has a back wall that opens and people keep moving until, we used to joke, until they're in Siberia, right? And they have no connection to the service and they can't see. And so we try to build sanctuaries that work at the small scale all the way up to the largest scale for high holidays. And we do that in varying ways. This question of facing the ark when you enter, that you come in, that you prepare yourself to be engaged in study and with Torah. Oh, that went backwards. That wasn't supposed to happen. Let's try that again. The idea of shape and detail. So the notion of Hamish is one that we have heard from many, many of our clients over time. And we always try to design spaces that are Hamish, that feel warm, that feel welcoming, and that they use the detailing and the architectural approaches to really create that warmth and intimacy and welcome you into the space. The space on the right here, you can see this, hopefully see this very dark blue ceiling with these sort of sprinkled lights in it. This is the chapel at BJBE. It's also used as a Beit Midrash. And what you see here and the ceiling may look like randomly spaced lights, but the way this is designed, and I did not announce this to the committee until we had done the layout and the lights were in place, is that this was the pattern of the stars on Yom Kippur over Jerusalem the year that we opened the synagogue. And that was a very special moment of infusing meaning into a space and taking something that you could say, well, it's a simple point of beauty, but it really had meaning to the congregation. I still remember that moment. It was absolutely fantastic conversation. And then the outside inside question, right? The connection to the outdoors, the bringing in of natural light to the sanctuary, while still being able to be focused on Torah and study, and also, frankly, still being able to be secure. So this is a synagogue. This is the synagogue in Dallas. What you see here is this beautiful connection to the outdoors. This outdoor space is surrounded by a wall. It's very secure. It's very welcoming, and it's a place where people can really feel safe and engage with the outside, and this very beautiful climate that they have there. Then the question of the bima. We often talk about an accessible bima in terms of not having steps that take you up to the ark, but this was a particular project that we engaged in where the reading table was actually created with hydraulics, so that people who are in a wheelchair or people who are, say, smaller when they are b'nai mitzvah, they are able to engage better with the table. And this did not use any electronics because that was a request of the congregation. We worked with this very special furniture maker to create this reading table piece, another piece of liturgical furniture that we often design for our synagogues. And then the notion of the worship center, the area of focus, a place that includes the Ner Tamid, the ark, potentially other symbology or other aspects that really focus you in. This is a view to the outside of a sanctuary in looking into the woods. The request of this congregation and the rabbi was that they wanted to be in the woods. We couldn't be in the woods, it was a wetland, but we certainly look at the woods, and it really focuses them throughout the year. This is also in Buffalo, New York, where the climate is not necessarily as nice as what you're dealing with, but this is still a beautiful evening that you see here for the service. And the stained glass that you see above was incorporated from their previous synagogue. So we always try to work to bring memory to all the spaces that we design for the Jewish community. And now, I think, apologies, it's not behaving for me. Let me go back. Can I go back? Oh. Give me a moment. But I think hold on.
So while you're waiting,
Go
we
ahead,
got
Michelle.
questions online. One was, could you go a little bit more into sustainability and what you mean by it? And then you talked a little bit about security. I don't know if you have anything else to add and consideration, cost and stuff. I just wanted to pass along those two questions. I don't know if this is the time for you to be able to answer them.
We can address, obviously, in very general terms, a couple of those questions. Lara, do you want to talk just a little bit about how we would sort of engage with the folks here around kind of answering the question, what does sustainability mean to you?
No, it's a great question, and I can talk for hours about it. So I will maintain as short of an answer as I possibly can. So we pull in sustainability into every aspect, whether it's materials or lack of materials. You know, there's materiality in off-gassing and use of your interaction with materials. There's also embodied carbon within materials, so we try to reduce that. we look at the design process to the extent of your orientation. We kind of go back to what you think of original buildings, where we would never have put a big glass wall on the north side because that doesn't help us, it hurts us with cold and it's not insulated. So we go back to a lot of our orientation principles with that. We also try very hard to balance what is our most energy efficient space through compactness of the design so that we're not adding extra walls and pieces. There's numbers of other pieces. I know Tony will talk with you about how we would bring the shape and the form into our sustainability. And we have these great interactions through our design process with that. But we also take from you, because there are so many different aspects to the sustainability that we like to hear what the sustainability means to you. Because everyone comes at this from a much different.
Laura, do you even know that we have a sustainability committee?
We do.
We do, and we're
Yes.
very excited to meet with them.
And do you know that our Near Shamid is actually runs on solar energy?
Someone
did
else
not-
whose does. The Nair Tamid we designed at BJB has a tiny little solar panel on the roof. That's fantastic.
It is amazing.
We did this many years ago.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
the point is that, yeah, the sustainability people are very active.
Yeah.
And they're very adamant in their ideas and that sort of thing. And you will meet them next week.
Yeah.
And you'll get to hear a lot of those things. But even in our limited building that we have now, we have integrated a lot of sustainability over the years.
Thanks, Lisa. We're trying to keep the dense format.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot to go over. And there was another question, if you can just speak briefly to the security, armory of windows, doors, things like that.
So what we would say about security at this point, right, at the point of not even having met with all of you, not really having looked at the site, not understanding what your exact concerns are, is that we have two things. The first of which is we take security extremely seriously. We have a security consultant who is part of our team. Okay, so he will be working with us all the way through in the room, sort of assessing everything from approaches to siting the building to questions of materiality. The other point that we will make is that whenever we design the synagogue, we always design it thinking also about the sort of passive approach, meaning a single point of entry, ease of people seeing what's going on, et cetera. So that's sort of the big picture approach we take. And that's really all we can say at this point until we engage fully with all of you and understand the exact issues that we'll be looking at.
That was all I had. So I don't know if anybody quickly here. Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, if she wants to finish, I'll finish the question.
I was just while they were getting technical. Are you guys over your technical issue?
Yeah, I think I can reshare the screen again, which of course is to the site and right, which you guys were gonna pipe in on, right?
Yeah. Just,
Okay, let me try sharing again and hopefully this will behave.
So Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind just talking about the big picture, like design process,
Sure.
we can come back to the site.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So here's what we'll do. Let me just stop sharing. So big picture design process. We begin with what we call a feasibility study. And what that really means is, first of all, we come and we listen to all of you. So as has been alluded to and will be laid out in more detail, we engage in a series of listening meetings with as many people in the community who wish to participate, who are parts of different affinity groups, who want to weigh in. We want to hear from everyone as best as we can, right? And we take that information and we gather it and we put it out there in a form that can be reviewed, as we said, and confirmed. And all of that happens before we put any kind of pen to paper, right? We look at the site because the site will tell us a lot in terms of what the building wants to be. We look at all of your goals across many different spectrum. Who's using the building, when, why, how, right? And we want to understand your vision as a community. We want to integrate your values and your guiding principles into what we know and what we have incorporated over the years from our work with many synagogue clients across the country. So that is a several month process. And as a part of that, we develop concept designs, and then we come back and we look at different options with the community. We get more feedback until we can come to a concept. And I'm stressing the word concept here because that's what it is. It's a sketch, it's a notion, it's an idea. It helps us establish the basis for truly moving forward into the rest of the design process, which I'm going to let Lara talk a little bit kind of big picture about what happens sort of once we have that concept and then how we move forward from there.
So those early steps that Rebecca took us through lead us to what we, and if you've ever done an addition or work through, project in your office, you've seen the drawings being made. So Tony will be doing amusing renderings and sketches that we'll be sharing, but from there we have to start putting pen to paper. And that pen to paper also takes us through the Boulder, City of Boulder design review. So we have to follow through their milestones. We'll be doing that at the same time as we're developing our drawing set because both processes take some time. Luckily, they parallel about the same approximate time frame, through a normal design process, and that allows us to be getting towards estimating, and then we start the construction process after both reviews are through. And that's a very high level. We'll be digging into this more as we go through, but that's our very high level design process.
Can you just pull up that slide real quick? So just
let me try to advance to that one where we can show the timeline, the sort of outline timeline of kind of how this works. All right, can everybody see that?
So the design process and where we are today is the gray line all the way, pretty much all the way to the left side of the screen. And then as we advance through the black meetings listed in the text listed in black are those meetings that we're having now and over the next month of time. From there, you'll see us move into the design presentation early September. And then we start to go through our pen to paper making of documents. That's the upper portion of the band. The lower band along the bottom that's our Boulder design review process. So as I said, they run in parallel. We'll be working through with the city and all of our reviews at the same time as we're fully developing all of our aspects of our design and our documentation. And then from there, we would be moving into construction and creating the space.
thank you.
Sure.
Great.
Now, if you can maybe go back to the site images, or I guess cue them up when I ask.
Yeah, I'll get them queued up as you start, Jeff. Go ahead.
Michelle, I don't see much. Oh, everyone sees me? Yeah, okay, there we go. All right.
Over the slides.
And can people hear me? First of all, I just want to say that this whole Zoom is being recorded for those that didn't know and will be available on a website link on the Bonnet Shalom website, so you can review this again later if you have interest. And we'll also separately kind of make a connection to the file that Feingold Alexander put together, so you could zoom in and look closer at the things that interest you. Now I want to back up and kind of introduce myself and briefly share a little bit of my story. So it's so good to see everyone that's here in person and everyone on Zoom. Thank you so much for being here, especially on such short notice. For those that don't know who I am or don't recognize my COVID hair, I am Jeff Gonlevy. I am Becca Gonlevy's partner. I am the father of Avital Gonlevy and Ornan Erez Gonlevy, who turned 1 year old today.
Also,
Becca and I moved here in late 2003, late 2013, to make Boulder our forever home and to raise our family. Bonnet Shalom was a big reason why we moved to Boulder. Like so many of you, we thought Boulder offered the best of so many things. Small town living, access to the great outdoors, and a vibrant, welcoming Jewish community. Our dream was to live down the street from Bonnet Shalom and to raise our kids in the Bonnet community. Even before we arrived, we had known about the vision of the Boulder Jewish Commons and the possibility that perhaps someday Bonnet Shalom would build a synagogue there. When we first arrived, Bonnet was homeless, and many Saturdays we rode our bikes to the Universalist Church on Pennsylvania to attend Shabbat services. At that time, I remembered lots of conversations about what Bonnet should do. Should it rebuild and reinvest in its current location or move across the street? I didn't have a strong opinion. I didn't yet feel rooted in a community, even though Becca had grown up here and her family was here and so involved in the community. So I didn't get involved in those conversations at the time. Fast forward 7 years later, the birth of our 3 kids and a lot more gray hair. And I've come to love Bonnet Shalom, both the community and our current property. I love the Hamish field like so many others of this place. I love sitting by the creek, enjoying Kiddush while the kids run around on the playground. With 3 young kids, I care a lot about the future of Bonnet Shalom. I also now know some of the limitations and struggles we've had with our current facility. And all the work so many have done to get us to this place, this point right now. About 8 weeks ago, I decided the future of Bonnet impacted me and my family one way or the other, that I had relevant career experience in real estate development, finance, and community engagement that could be helpful to the community as it contemplated its future. I decided it was time to get involved. I'm excited to see what vision we can develop together as a community for the future of Bonnet and to explore together in partnership with Feingold Alexander, whether we can design a new Bonnet facility that makes sense for our community, all we are today and all we want to be for generations to come. As many of you know, we have an opportunity, thanks to the generosity and hard work of the Org Foundation, to move onto a specific piece of land across the street from our existing building. Rebecca or Laura, can you, oh, there it is, it's there. So this is the site in kind of that shaded blue. This is kind of the specific site that we have an opportunity to take our visions that we develop over the coming weeks and potentially implant them right there on that site. If we decide to come together as a community to coalesce around a shared vision and are able to raise the needed funds, Org Foundation will donate approximately 2.5 acres of land for our new synagogue. So this is an aerial view, and the site is outlined in blue. This compares to the 1.25 acres of land east of the creek that Bonnet currently sits on. Subject to design and city zoning constraints, this should give us more usable open space and more parking, as well as the potential for lots more buildable square footage. Basically a bigger building. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I want to just kind of ground us in this site, and I actually invite everyone at some point over the coming weeks to walk onto the land and walk around a little bit. It's open. There are no locks. You could go and walk the site. So these are some photos that I took today. On the left there, you see the view west, and you see in the background that's Bonnet Shalom in the background, looking west from the site. To the east is Milk and Honey Farm at the JCC. In the far background of that photo, you see the current greenhouse, and what you can't really see in the foreground is some beautiful row crops that the farm staff over there have planted and are tending. Food that goes to I can't remember the exact organization, but it goes to food pantries. It also goes into the ECC at the JCC for cooking classes and other things like that. Next slide, please. So there you see the view to the north. There's the current JCC campus. And to the south is a single family home that is actually also growing food for donation. So it's a really beautiful site. and there's a lot of potential. This property is zoned RR1 in the city of Boulder. Religious assembly is a by right use. Thanks to the foresight of the Org Foundation and the determined hard work of the Org Foundation and the JCC, the site is about as shovel ready as any piece of land could be. Org Foundation made sure that all utility connections and drainage were planned for ahead of time and in place, ready to be connected to. As part of the annexation of the Boulder Jewish Commons land into the city of Boulder and the approval of the JCC, pre-approval was granted by the city for a synagogue building in this location. So instead of going through the long, tedious, expensive process the JCC went through to annex, to get approval to build their facility, our potential process would simply require a replat of Lot 2 and a site plan amendment, which we believe could be an administrative review process and potentially avoid public hearings in front of the city planning board and city council, although there's no guarantees there. And we are blessed to have Liz Hansen as a member of our community and a member of the board who has years of expert experience, both as a working in the city of Boulder Planning Department and as a private land use consultant, one of the foremost experts working on land use issues in the city of Boulder. I'm really excited to start this process with all of you, to work with Feingold Alexander, to imagine what's possible, to share our individual ideas and visions for the site, and to come together as community to put forth hopefully a consensus vision for the site, and then test the feasibility of whether or not it makes sense to build it on this site. So now is the time to kind of share our visions, and I know this process feels a little bit rushed, and we're still working out a lot of the details going forward, but hopefully after next week, after these listening sessions with Feingold Alexander, things will start to feel like the process is kind of more settled down, more known ahead of time. So let's see, at this point, I think, Michelle, can we put up the yeah.
Gotta put on my other hat.
There we go. So one of my particular roles moving forward is the community engagement piece. So I do invite people to reach out to me, to share their thoughts and concerns. My email is jefflevy22@hotmail.com. I'm gonna walk you a little bit through, we talked a little bit, Feingold Alexander team talked a little bit about the process over the next 10 weeks or so, starting next week with their listening sessions with community groups. Let's see. Next slide. There we go. So we hope as many of you get involved in those as possible. I think the community meeting, is there a schedule here, Bruce? There we go.
At the end.
Okay. So these meetings start next Tuesday. For all those young families, if you haven't been directly outreached yet and are able to come to the synagogue in person to meet with Feingold Alexander, great. We'd love to have you. Otherwise, there will be a Zoom link. And then the education committee and ritual committee, Shabbat and Minyan groups, the kitchen, folks that are involved, volunteers with the kitchen. I believe Jessica hopefully will be involved as well as someone who has done a lot of catering. So these are the meetings right now that are currently scheduled for Tuesday, July 13th. In addition to the individual meetings that are in white, I really want to point out the meeting at the bottom highlighted in blue, a community meeting from 7 to 9. More information will be sent on that hopefully soon to kind of give you a little bit more detail on exactly what's going to take place there. But it's an opportunity to kind of give specific input on particular components of the building, the worship space, thoughts and ideas on worship space, on programming space, etc. But we will get an email out on that. And I also just kind of want to highlight that we have put together a web page off of the Bonet webpage, and I think the link is titled New Building Project. We will be updating that as we go. That's where a link to this whole Zoom will be, a link to Feingold Alexander's slides. The same details that we send out via email will also be there. We're working hard to kind of get that all set up, so appreciate your patience. On the 14th, there'll be some more meetings, the Green Team meeting. The architects will meet with the Green Team. There'll be meetings with the rabbi and executive director. And again, as Feingold Alexander mentioned, they will take everything that they heard during these in-person meetings. If we need to schedule any follow-up Zoom meetings once they're back in Boston, we can do that. And they will regurgitate to us everything they heard. And there'll be an opportunity to kind of check in and confirm that they heard correctly, like they said, before they start putting pen to paper on any kind of design.
Is that like, another like presentation to the community, or
No.
it's just to the?
No, there'll be notes that we will publicize on the webpage and let the community know.
Can you clarify we again when you say we?
I mean, I guess in this case, I will say that I am taking responsibility for that as someone who is directly trying to spearhead the community engagement process. So I will take responsibility for working to make sure that those are communicated back. Everyone has access to those to review them and can provide any follow-up comments that they feel are needed. So I'll go back to kind of what we're trying to do in terms of communication. So we are going to endeavor to provide regular updates, most likely via email or the e-news, or to say in the e-news, hey, there's new information on the webpage, go to the webpage, to look at it. We're working to put together an input form, so this will be one way to provide feedback that will get looked at, and anything that needs to to be passed along to Feingold Alexander will be passed along to Feingold Alexander. Anything that kind of just needs to be discussed again amongst people that are working day to day to try to drive this project forward will be discussed, and we'll endeavor to respond. So I already mentioned email. There'll be, like I said, we'll try to put the meeting schedule on that webpage as well, but also communicate it in other forms, e-news, direct email if necessary. So it really tonight was really kind of the kickoff, informational meeting, introduction to the architects, and things really get going in earnest next week, July 13th and 14th. So I think at this point, let's see. Is there a way to see if anyone online had any questions?
Yeah.
So there's a question about whether the single family home next to the potential site is Jeff and Becca's home. No, it is not. The site is in the city, and social action committee meeting, has that been scheduled? I'm going to invite Bruce Wildman up, and I'll let him answer that one, and he has some closing remarks for all of us.
Social action committee.
Are they on there?
That was the question.
Oh,
Has that meeting been scheduled?
They haven't been on.
they haven't RSVP'd yet. So the social action committee was contacted and they haven't RSVP'd. We actually have a time saved for them at 2 o'clock. So 2 to 3 would be the time. So there was some discussion. The question was, is social action scheduled? And the answer is that Sandy was going to approach the group to see if they wanted to convey that in an email. Otherwise, I'm holding the time from 2 to 3 for them. So, but that
On Wednesday.
on Wednesday. Okay, good. So let me see. So I think we're good at 8, right? So we said till 8. So I just want us to have, what's that? 8:30. So I can't see if there's any Oh, so that was Beth and Peter. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're good on questions. So maybe we can take some questions inside the room. So for those online, we have about 15 to 20 people in the room. And there's some questions.
So the elephant in the room for any building project is, what does this cost? So no, I'm not asking you, nor is it, I would imagine nobody is asking you for a precise figure, but some range of what you think the project will be, plus what you approach the community and what percentage do you think you can get to?
So the great news is that Ron Square is on the other line, and he and I have been maybe texting just back and forth. So Ron, I wonder if you could join the conversation and answer that question.
Yeah, sure. So I'm here with Azaz as well, that I assume most, if not all of you know. And, you know, we've thought a lot about this question. I'll tell you how we're thinking about the cost. Right now, we're not in the mode of constraining our vision. We're in the mode of exploring what our needs are. The cost ultimately will be determined by our needs. But I will tell you that, you know, we all love Bonet for its modesty. We understand that this is a multi-generational project, you know, a legacy project, and we can't just think about our own needs, but we have to think about longer term needs. But once we know what it is, and that is the purpose of the design phase that we're so pleased to have Feingold Alexander join, that we'll be much better able to put a price on it. I'll just say that the JCC is across the street. That project raised, you know, funds that I think so far exceeded anyone's sort of expectations and belief of what was possible in Boulder, Colorado. I can assure you that our project is more modest, but quite dear to us. And of course, you know, we have less, you know, we have less families that are going to be engaged. We're not, we don't believe that there'll be substantial funds available from outside our community, but we're very confident that our families will join together and find a path forward for this. I will say something that has been important to me, and I believe to many others. We will not burden this congregation with debt. We don't believe that's the right thing to do. So we will have to find the funds from within our extended family because debt is not a way to move forward. So we're very confident and excited. As people learn more, I think their generosity will simply grow. So that's where we are today. I think there's a question from Francine.
Hi, am I on?
You are.
Yes.
So, assuming we move forward with this, what will happen to the current Bonnet Shalom? And is there any way that we could design something that will connect us to the back of Bonnet and the creek and what there is there now?
So if it's okay, Bruce, I'll take that as well. You know, there was a lot of discussions over the years about, you know, liquidating certain real estate to help pay for a new building. And the conclusion we've drawn is that we feel that that building should act, you know, in a way like an endowment for the health of our congregation going forward. So we expect to raise the full amount needed for the new building and to retain, at least initially, ownership of the historic building. Now, we've heard some really exciting ideas, but you know, we don't know if they'll happen. That our building and the creek and the lot may even remain within the family, in that the JCC may have some real use for it. But if not them, we'll find others that will have use for it and put it to good use and create a bit of a revenue stream to help support the congregation. And that's our current plan. You know, currently there's no plans to change Rabbi Mark's place, and there is some access to that land, and to the river, and that we hold dear. But we very much are going to keep in mind people's attachment to the creek and to the land. And, you know, we've had several conversations now with the JCC. It's just too early to tell. We would love that to be the solution. We'll work towards it. But one way or another, we'll find a good use for it. But we don't intend to sell it as a precursor or a necessity to build a building. That's not the plan.
Good. Thank you.
Are there any more questions in the room? So Jerry Princeberg.
So, assuming we're holding, first of all, this building is in use until at least 2030. And then hopefully after, or whatever we decide. Is there funds set aside, because this building really needs some major repairs and maintenance? But, I mean, I'm not talking nickel and dime, I mean, I'm talking big expenses to keep this building in decent shape.
Please repeat the question.
They're curious to
No,
know.
won't hear from there.
So let me just summarize the question quickly. So Jerry asked, this building, our current building, needs a lot of work. And he feels like it's a large amount of money. That is actually one of the evaluations that we need to do. So the step we're at is to engage the community, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. So I would just ask if we can push that one, like in the group of, we'll get to it. So, okay, it's not in our critical path right now. So, okay. I think at this point, we're running a meeting, right? So they can leave.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to pass along I wanted to be an appreciation for Feingold Alexander and your time. They're out on the East Coast, so I think you can sign off and we can continue with the questions. I don't think there's going to be more for you. Thank you again for indulging us, and we want to honor your time, and I want to also be able to answer any other questions. So thanks.
Great.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you
Thank
next
you all.
week.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
We'll continue to take questions, and I'd also like to close. So if there's any other questions in the room, online, I don't see any coming up. So with that, I'll just.
I do still have a question.
Okay, great.
Just before, like, I'm still confused in terms of process, like, especially when Ron was just saying, like, we don't anticipate this, we don't anticipate that. Is that the Boning board talking? Like, who is the we? Who's leading this process? Who's making the decisions?
Ron, do you want to hop back on?
Sure. Although I'm really not maybe the best person, because, I'm not actually a board member, just an interested party. I know a board member pretty well, but I can tell you, both when we had the awful flood years ago and needed to do the construction, and even as we continue to pursue this project, the B'nai Shalom board and key leaders in the community have been involved and continue to be involved and will continue to be involved, hopefully representing, and I trust that most people feel they represent the community at large. And so when I say we, I really mean the board as it acts to represent the congregation. And board members, I think if they have doubts about how people are feeling, reach out to those people, get the pulse of things. So that's the we. But ultimately, the we is all of us. We're a community of 200 families. And at the end of the day, it's we collectively through this process with people providing input, we'll get where we need to be. Bruce, would you add anything?
I just want to make sure, did we answer your question, or we're still?
I still feel confused.
Okay, so let me answer it a little bit more the way that I think about it. So I'm heading towards a wrap up on it, but really, we're at the step of looking at concept design. When I first came to B'nai Shalom more than 20 years ago, and I was asked to be on the board by Kurt Stovall, there was something that came up. I don't remember if the gutters need to be repaired or whatever it was, but the answer was, oh, do we really need to repair them? We're going to be moving across the street, right? And so throughout our history, and then in 2007, 2008, there was the collapse, and that stopped that forward progress, right? So that was one, whether you want to call it a disaster, right? So that slowed us down. And so then we got wind going again. And then when you moved to Boulder, we had the flood in 2013, right? So we've been, so then we had that period of time where, okay, now are you going to move across the street? Well, that wasn't good timing. So then in the last 3 years, at every board meeting, we've reported that the OREG Foundation has asked us to make a good decision about, are you going to move to the Commons, or we're planning to land, we're going to ask somebody else if they want to be part of this project. So our goal in this process is for the community to give OREG an answer and for us to answer it for ourselves, right? And that question really is, and I think, Gary Jacobs and I were talking, and he said to me, the question for me is, this building really going to be here? Is this where our community is going to live for the next 25 years? And for me, that's what propels me, is because I have a role on the team, right? And I have a personal belief. And so my role on the team is to hold space that the community will make the decision. It's not going to be made by individuals. And there's going to be a discussion, there's going to be measuring the opportunity, the two choices. But right now we're really at the concept thing, because the group of us that have been asking the questions, is this really the place? We haven't gone through a process that lets us have a good answer. The question that Ron always says to me is, what is it, right? Like, we can't make a good decision. And part of the reason that we brought on the architects is to facilitate the conversation within Bonnet Shalom. I can't moderate a discussion amongst the same group of people, but it's really to study this issue and be in inquiry, right? And so it's actually a really great question, because I even go back to 6 weeks ago, right? So we had the Parsha on the Scouts, right? And so the Scouts' mistake, they were just asked to go into the land, right? Take a look at it, and it's this idea of scouting, right? Rather than, and they came back with an interpretation, right? And so that's viewed as their error. And so right now, we're just in the scouting role, okay? Where everyone can decide where they want to be. And it's going to be as it occurs to you as process. We can have all the process that we want, meaning that it will come to a community vote. If I think, as I read the bylaws, there's actually
right here.
What's that?
Yeah.
So
I have a comment, if I'm on. Yeah, one of the synagogues that the architects showed pictures of, several pictures, was Beit Tzedek in Buffalo, New York. I've been there. I've been in that building. It's a beautiful building. And my brother, who is a former president of that congregation, has had dealings with the architect. So I'm just wondering whether it's appropriate to contact my brother and ask whether, what the relationship was between that congregation and the same architect that we're talking about. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, we don't want to do that behind your back.
No, you should feel free to. This is Ron. We have done reference checks with communities that have worked with this firm in the past in order to do diligence, but sure, we would welcome it. I do want, and maybe I'll make a comment that even addresses the prior question. We believe this firm is the right firm. And, we considered 9 and went deep with 3. And you may have heard this, but the decision on this firm was unanimous, and we were all, unanimously excited about working with them. We think they can get us all the way. But as we've said before, we have only engaged them for the initial stage, the design stage, to get to, as Bruce said it, to what it is. And when you know what it is, you know what it costs, and you know if our community is supportive in a way that allows us to do it. And at that point, when those things come together and there is community support, we will move forward. So it is still relevant to collect information, especially if it's important that we hear it about this firm and how it behaves. But we're pretty confident that they're good people. But we'd welcome you bringing any insight. By the way, we've learned from the folks we spoke to about the process and what worked well and what didn't work well. And there's no right way to do this process, but we're always open to learning. So, and I agree. I thought that congregation is one of the more beautiful ones that they constructed. It is quite moving, I thought. So yeah, talk to your friends and relatives and let us know. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Do you want to answer the question about?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's kind of interesting, the reason that the synagogue built the building. The original synagogue was on land that an auto dealership wanted. And they offered the congregation $7 million to sell it to them. So then they did some research and they decided to join with another synagogue because of course we're talking the Northeast where people are getting older. And so there's the original old synagogue building, and then there's a connecting piece. And then there is in the back, this new
Sanctuary with the glass wall. Yeah,
And,
which is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah. And so we actually have been in there before it was even used. And my sister-in-law, Jeffrey's brother's wife, does the gift shop. So she's been very concerned that that's taken care of. And of course, then the family has bought the wall for the plaques. And so that all had to be moved. So Ellen is really has really been very involved in all of this. So
yeah, and we'll talk to him.
Yeah, so we'll talk to him soon and
I know you also
All right, so there was just one other question, and this is a long wrap up. But so the question was, who is the committee? And so the current committee or the selection committee, it's all up on the website, was Rabbi Mark, myself, Ron Square, Liz and John Hansen, and what's that? Well, Gary helped us originally, so, and Gary Jacobs, but and as we've grown, we've kind of like, as we feel like the need for additional people, we'll keep expanding. Like, so Jeff was added on as really to bring the community into an engagement process with his expertise. And so recently, after we put out the first note, I was so excited because I received a note from Cass Gottlieb, who's a new member, and she's a semi-retired architect. So I was thrilled, and she actually guided me and helped me to understand some of the process even further that we're going through. And so there's a lot of talent in our community. So while I'm seeing who is on the committee, so if the question was who's on the committee, who's the we? So the we is ever expanding, but right now it's us. And if you want to direct your comments, they go to, we'll go to Jeff and they'll be reviewed by the architects and the entire team. So as we enter into this next step, there's a lot of consensus building. And so that's actually where I think we're close to finishing. So I wanted to wrap it up and just honor everybody's time. So this, I happen to bring along, I happen to have this in my back pocket. This was a mezuzah, I think this is where the camera is, that Martin Small actually carved, right? And you'll notice that like I have another mezuzah here, and there's always the shin, right? And the shin is to remind us of the scroll that's inside, right? And so the shin comes from the Shema, right? Which says, listen, right? So as we go through this process, it's listening, right? And as you heard through all the speakers, we all talked about love, how we love this place, how it's such a part of our life, and how many of us want to give back in this special way. But the other story of the mezuzah is the way it's mounted, right? So the mezuzah is mounted at a slant, right? So Rashi had one version of that, and he said, well, out of respect, it should be straight up and down. And his grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, he said, no, the scrolls were laid down, so therefore it should be horizontal, right? Because his name meaning straight. And then 150 years later, it was codified that it would actually be on the slant, right? So it's very rare that we take these two ideas and we put them together, and it's codified that way. So as we go through the process, we're going to do a lot of listening, a lot of loving, and we're going to all have to hear each other and find the best solution, or a solution that works. So I just want to restate that a week from today, we'll be in the sanctuary, and as much as possible, because this is a collaborative process, it's really great if you feel comfortable that you come for the different sessions, right? Zoom is okay, but it's really great to be in a room and then you can share expressions, you can really understand more deeply. And we have the architects coming in here at, and they're working, you know, sun up till sundown, right? Their first day is a long day. So I just want to encourage, if you can make time on your schedule, please do that. There will be some other opportunities, right? So as Jeff said, every couple of weeks, there's a check-in with the architect to make sure that what we said, they heard, and we go back and forth, and then there's a design review. And then 2 weeks later, there's another design review. And then our goal really is to have an image for High Holidays, so that we should be so lucky to all gather together at the JCC for High Holidays. So that's our time frame. So I'm just asking, just once again, to please come in community with me and come in community with everyone that's in this room, that we all share in this great experience. For me, it'll be a once in a lifetime. I've never had the chance to think about building a synagogue. And so I hope you'll join me just at the scouting stage, and hopefully we can move forward together. So thanks again for joining. And if there's any questions, you know us all. So thanks again.
Thank you, everyone, and B'nai.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Allah Kavod.
Yasher koach.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.